G'day and welcome to the Grow a Small Business Podcast. I'm your host, Troy Truen. Each week, we speak with an owner who has grown a business with 5 to 30 team members to something bigger. Diving into their numbers and unearthing the pain they've experienced, we explore what they did to overcome each barrier and what they would do differently from day one. Let's get into it. Welcome, everyone. Today I'm interviewing Victor Purlnik from Trustshoring, based in Berlin, Germany. Thanks for your time today, Victor.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be here.
Let's start with how we know each other. So you use the Podino platform to get onto casts.
That's right. Yeah. We did work with some really nice folks at the Balkans to see if we can get in a few podcasts that we really like. And they did their work. So that's how we ended up being here. And I'm really glad because it's a good show I haven't heard of before. So I'm very excited to be here.
That's great. Thank you. And you said before we hit record, you've listened to a few episodes.
Yeah, I have. And I find it really great. It's something I've not listened to before, is because I work in the startup space. So we listen to a lot of podcasts where, out of San Francisco, out of the Bay Area, the unicorns and the likes. And obviously I can relate, but actually growing a meaningful small business is something that's equally exciting, just as challenging, but I think just as fulfilling in a way.
Yeah. Tell our audience a bit about your business, what it does and how it makes money.
Of course. So I'm the founder of Trustshoring, which is a company that helps startups and other companies with or without technical leadership launch and scale software products. And we do that by giving people who need it advice on how to actually plan and launch their product. But then also we match people up with the right resources, mostly remote resources, software houses, developers from our network of literally hundreds of vetted developers and companies from various regions. And then we give them advice on how to work with them. We make sure everything goes well. And that's how we've helped over 300 startups and businesses launch, scale, validate, and exit, actually, some of them all the way to there.
And it's all across the spectrum of technology, so apps, systems, websites, etc.
Yeah, everything, because we're not a software house that specializes in something. We have a network of very specialized people for everything, or very specialized companies for everything as well. So whether that's mobile apps, whether that's SaaS applications, whether that's games, blockchain, fintech, you name it, we have someone who specializes in that.
That's great. And it's much sought after. One of my degrees is computing, and I've owned 6 or 7 tech companies myself. And it is fucking hard to find a good nerd, someone that's, reliable and knows what they're talking about. Companies can go through 2 or 3 or 4 agencies or developers before they finally get the right one, which is a very, very painful experience. I get hit up for advice all the time, and it's a scary decision to have to try and help someone find a good developer.
Yeah, and it's not even just about the skills, right? And so we do get a lot of people who try through various freelancer platforms or try Googling someone, but also, and that's interesting, we also get people who ask their friends for recommendation, and they had a really great company they were working with, and it still didn't work out. And that's because there isn't that software company or that software house. It really depends on a lot of factors, which includes, what you're building, of course, but also and the technology, but also the roles that you have in-house, the skills and knowledge that you have in-house versus what they need to provide, right? Some companies just give you developers. Other companies also give you a UI UX designer and do a bit of planning, and other companies really go into product strategy. And so depending on what you need, it's usually a different company you should be working with. The problem though is uh, most of them don't even know that themselves, and they take on every project literally, and they will sell you product strategy, even though they might not be the best fit for that. And so that's really the problem we're trying to solve. A, to short circuit you trying out 5 different companies, but B, also uh, actually giving you the roles that you need in order to build a winning product.
Yep. Well, I know where I'm going to go if friends and people come to me for advice on finding a good developer. I'm certainly not going to be answering that question. I'll point them straight to you.
Yeah, we're happy to chat, even, even if somebody just has questions, like anytime. We've helped a lot of people find the right agency from within people they've already had on their short list, and I'm totally happy to do that.
Yep. And maybe explain to the audience, I've never used TopTal, but I've heard of it. It's a resource. I think they say they've got the top 2% developers in each category that you can hire. But maybe explain how you guys are different to something like TopTal.
So TopTal I've never used personally, obviously, because we have our own network. So it's more about things I've heard. So I don't necessarily want to say that things that might not be true, but as I understand, TopTal really mostly gives developers, consultants, freelance or full time that then jump on a project and do their thing. But usually that requires technical and product leadership from your side. It's something that we provide as well. So if people come to us and ask just for a developer for either a couple of months or long term to join their team, even direct hire is totally possible. We recruit and headhunt as well. So that is something we do. But the thing that we do on top is, if people need a more managed team or just an end-to-end solution, then we provide software house. And I'm not sure if TopTal does that. I want to say something that is not true about them. But from what I've heard, that is not the case at that point.
How did you start out?
Yeah, I've actually what's funny is I've been in that space ever since I was 14 in a way. Back then I was trying to be a freelance web designer, something like that. Did websites for a couple companies in my area, and I knew that I was gonna go for computer science later on, and so I've been doing that pretty early on. That's how I financed my MacBooks and whatnot. So I've always been a nerd. But then when I actually went to university, I pretty quickly realized that I don't actually want to be a developer. I am a developer. I consider myself to be fairly good or okay at it, given the experience that I have. But that wasn't what I was getting joy from. And so I did study computer science, but also engineering management. And I think in my second year, I just randomly met people from Ukraine at a conference, and we decided to just on the spot, pretty much, I've gone there once, co-found a software house.
Right.
So I jumped right into that.
Did you drop out of uni
No
or
idea what I was doing.
did you finish in?
No, I did not. Yeah, I did. It took me slightly longer than most others.
Yeah.
But no, I was doing that on the side. Again, had no idea about marketing, no idea about sales. But I was in charge of that, right? So it we had ups, we had downs. In the end, I exited that company when we had about 80 people working for us. And that was mostly because by that time I was doing primarily sales and like the initial consulting work for the company. And what I realized is that when you run your own company, you obviously see who's a great fit for you. but you also see who might be somewhere in the middle, not a bad fit, but somewhere in the middle. And the dilemma is, what do I do with them, right? Um, and I decided that I didn't want to work with these clients, but I knew who they could work with, right? I knew better companies that were a better fit for that specific person. And so I literally then started referring people just to our competitors. And at some point, I just realized that that is what I should be doing in the first place, which is, when I left the company, I exited and started Trustshoring. Obviously, the company was one of our most important partners early on. But our network just grew since then, and that is my backstory of sorts. And I've also started another business last year, which is called Superb Hire, and that really is recruiting for the non-technical roles, so marketing, operations, virtual assistants, all remote first as well. But that's something that we started last year that is just brand new, and it sort of complements the tech offering for people who also want to do operations and marketing remotely.
Yeah, great. Fantastic. And so what year did you start trust shoring up and how old were you?
That was 2016, so that's 6 years ago. So round 23.
Yep, great. Do you have some key numbers you can share to illustrate the growth of the business over the 6 years?
Sure. So on average, we've had 50, 60% year over year growth.
Wow.
Um, over the last 2 years has been not 100, but fairly close.
So you definitely
Uh,
sort of bump after due to COVID.
yes, yes. So we did get high on that COVID money that was spent in the US mostly. We'll see how that goes next year. but but yeah, we did get some of that. People were looking for developers like crazy. We've seen developer salaries in Eastern Europe pretty much double since 2020.
Wow. Okay.
Um,
Mm.
which is insane. It's absolutely insane. Some people still ask me, obviously they just don't know, if never worked, if there are things like a sweatshop of developers in Eastern Europe where people would be forced to work for a low salary. And that might have been true like 20 years ago. But that place just doesn't exist right now.
Yep.
Because of the opportunities for developers. But yeah, so we have probably around like 100 agencies, thousands of developers in our network, probably permanently around 100 working on our projects at any given time. And yeah, we're 8 people, pretty much full time. That's our core team. Everybody's from a different country. So that's really, really fun. Makes it hard to plan a retreat, but other than that, it's really cool.
And how many team members did you start out with full time equivalent? It was just yourself?
Starting out, yeah, that was pretty much myself, and I did hire like an assistant very early on. That was still on site in Berlin, a student I was working with, which and I had a even I was next to the agency. I still had a part-time coding job in Berlin at a startup. So pretty early on I figured I need some help with the sort of mechanics of the business. So I hired for that, but that was before I went on my remote hiring spree, so to speak.
Fantastic. I'm just seeing I checked out your website. Hang on, we'll edit this bit out. Yep, that's great. No, and not nothing else on key numbers before we move on to the next one.
Yeah, we probably are making around, or not make, oh, start again.
Start again. Yeah.
So our monthly sort of volume that we place with agencies or developers or whatever it might be is around, it fluctuates, but around $500,000 US per month. Um
That's
which
that's amazing. That's 6 million a year.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much. again, it's not been like that. We've had some crazy growth recently, so that's pretty much this year, last year.
Yep.
Again, we'll see where it goes next year, but that is around 100, 120 full-time developers, probably something like that.
Well done, Victor. That's tremendous growth over 6 years.
Well, thank you.
When was the moment you felt like you had succeeded?
Really, that for me, that sort of success is when I can. I think a lot of people say that, but when I don't have to ask permission, when I can sustain myself, I don't have to go anywhere tomorrow, but just the ability, not having to ask for vacation days, or not having to save up for one vacation per year or something like that. That is really freedom for me, being able to provide for my family, not having to worry about that, and really focusing on the things that are fun, and helping others, growing businesses. Um, I think that was the moment when I was sort of able to do that. When I was able to say, okay, I'm actually helping others. I don't have to worry about myself. I think this is success.
Yep. So that probably answers the next question then, what success looks like. Number one thing you'd recommend to marketing a fast-growing business?
Yeah, this is a really tricky one, because as I said, I started out having no idea about marketing, no idea about sales, literally. And what I came to learn through a lot of trials, errors, failures, and that is just my perception of things. But um, I started categorizing things into tools, and tools, people, and in sort of strategic advice and knowledge. And so a lot of especially coaches that try to sell a very specific program. I'm the guy that's going to scale your business through Facebook groups, for example. Um, I sort of put them into the tool bucket, because if you know that you need them and that this is going to be good for your business, then you should work with them. But a lot of them try to sell you that they will actually tell you what's good for your business on a strategic level. And a lot of them do some branding and positioning, and it just turns out that you should be using Facebook groups, and then they do that, and it's not an overall marketing strategy. But I didn't know that at that time, so I tried a lot of those. I tried a lot of other tools like YouTube or Facebook or whatnot, and everything has a success to some degree. But unless you know strategically what you're doing, you're not going to see that marketing success. And so that's the first thing that we at one point then found an advisor for, a very, very senior person out of South Africa. She's been working at corporates, at large startups, 20 years of marketing experience, and paid her good money per hour. But we only needed like one per week to understand how do we even position ourselves. Like, the first time doing that exercise with someone who really understands what they're
Yep.
doing is really powerful.
It's well worth paying that much higher hourly rate. You're getting years and years of experience and mistakes in one corner of the business where most business owners, and I think even techies more so, don't have a background or experience in sales or marketing. So that's very, very smart. Out of interest, how did you find her? Did you use Clarity.fm, which is a big mentor kind of matching service?
No, not at all. That was actually through a mutual connection.
Yep.
I think I got lucky this way.
Yep.
It's hard because a lot of people that are very public, they try to do that mentorship coaching model and try to sell packages. And that then, when they try to turn that into too much of a productized service, it again tends to work more like a tool than actual advice. So I think I've once heard a good trick where you can just take a look on LinkedIn, like who has a day job but who is really experienced, and just ask if they could be a mentor for a couple of hours per month. And it seems that can work if you do a bit of sourcing. But yeah, so that was just a find through
Yeah,
somebody we knew, and it worked out really well.
that's good. That's a clever trick using LinkedIn that way. I haven't used Clarity.fm, but it looks like a good service. It's similar. You can find someone that's got experience in a niche, say a sales manager at a app company that focuses just on one certain thing, and they've got like 10 years experience, and you can just pay them by the hour.
Exactly. Yeah, I've not yet tried them, but I'm aware that they exist. So I think that could be a great solution too.
Mm. How did you fund your business?
This fully bootstrapped again. I was running the agency, from which I was not taking too much of a salary. So I was working part time as a developer in Berlin, and that's literally how I started it. So it was self funded. And once uh, so I did hire out first before quitting my job, so to speak. Right. So I did hire the assistant. But then pretty quickly I did quit the job as well and started building out the team. But it's all bootstrapped. So it's been tight budgets, trying to leverage various kinds of remote resources and whatnot. But I wouldn't do it any other way. Some people say, "Oh, I'll take that in house." By in house, they mean they'll open up an office and hire people locally. Um, I would not do that. I couldn't be happier with the people that I have right now. And some people treat that as outsourcing or whatnot. I treat them as my team, and they're amazing.
And so you haven't taken investors on along the way. It's just yourself.
No.
Yeah, just 100% yourself.
Yep, just me.
Fantastic. That's great. If you were to start up today with plenty of funding, would you go into your industry?
For sure. It's a great industry. It's exciting. And I know that with a lot of funding, you can obviously grow some more, hire more great people. But also, as it always is with funding, right? Sometimes you don't learn fast enough. It's supposed to accelerate learning, right? So you can spend more money on an experiment and try it out, learn faster. What I see happens a lot. And I think a couple of years ago, if I would have taken funding, I would have done the same mistake.
But just faster.
It's just,
And
yeah, it's just, I think not faster, actually slower, because some of the things you only realize once the money runs out and you're forced to sort of cut them.
Yep.
So I do see that from time to time, where people just go into one direction until the money runs out instead of actually running experiments. So I think it does take experience to take funding, and looking back, I would not have given myself money at 23 years old.
At least you're honest.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, that was sort of our journey in terms of funding.
Can you outline the most stressful point in your small business growth journey so our audience can learn from it?
Definitely starting out in validation. Just typical thing where you have the person in the gold mine, right? Just short of striking gold, but they don't know about it, right?
Yep.
It's like, do I keep going? Do I go back? Do I get a job? Do I do what the other people tell me to do? And so obviously all the first plateaus until you realize that that's normal. It's just the same level of stress and anxiety. Yeah, I did not enjoy that, but I think luckily that was probably the worst thing that's happened to us, is like a plateau or a small drop in revenue. Nothing worse than that. So I think we're pretty lucky in that regard.
What area in business do you feel you've had to work on the most to add the greatest value?
That was the marketing and the team building. Likewise, I had no experience in running teams. I was the nerd, right? So not the best social skills, not the most empathy. And if you then add people working remotely, where it's just easy to stay in your basement, not talk to anybody for like 3 days. That does add a degree of difficulty to working with others. But also here, sort of I distinguish between people you simply delegate to, right, which is something where I know what I'm doing, but I just need to extend my throughput, so to speak. So I delegate, and versus um hiring people that are much better than you in certain areas. And there's obviously a huge difference in price, right? So early on, I was only able to afford people I could delegate something to that I knew how to do. And only recently I was really able to not just hire advisors for a couple of hours, but also hire someone in marketing who's really strong and much better than what I do. And that was very challenging, trying to understand how to make people excited about coming to work, aligning them on something. Did a lot of work on that, and I think I found that even more challenging than the marketing, to be honest. Um, had a while where there was quite severe churn, but also because we only had like one or two people, and they didn't really feel like it was a community or a firm or whatnot, especially with me being like off for a week at a time. That didn't help. But now, since we're 8 people now, it's much more of a self-propelling team spirit. Just learned that um our previous marketer, she just came to visit the country where we had two other people, and they would just meet up. And that's great, because that really shows that it didn't mean something and people did care about each other, or still do. And that's what you really want to see, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. What have you enjoyed the least about managing fast growth?
The long hours, got to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's all the things that you do at odd hours where other people either sleep or watch TV or hang out with their kids. I mean, I right now, or when we start, is like 5 a.m. too. But then whenever I do it, I do enjoy that, and I'm really happy I did. But just making yourself put in that work, um, not something that I really enjoy. But I like the results, like all the others, right? So
Mm. Yep.
it's what you do.
What do you love most about growing a small business?
Mm, I think that ties into the definition of success earlier, the independence. Also gets back at the funding, right? Where I don't like that oversight. It's probably good in a way too, to have the accountability. I guess some structures and business ideas and people thrive in that sort of setup. But I like staying small. I mean, we're small in the end. We're tiny. But the freedom that gives me and probably a lot of others is exactly what I'm looking for.
What has been the biggest mindset shift for you in your small business growth journey?
Um, Fast decision making, I think. So really being having to make decisions on the spot about what to do and not regretting them later. I think because I used to really overthink a lot of things, strategize, plan for weeks and months, and think about things over and over again. Um, and so a lot of things are reversible, right? Especially sort of what you put on your landing page or what that looks like or things like that. And so I think that is probably the biggest mindset shift that I had. And I've recently read a really good book about sort of decision making and thinking about decisions, and it's called Thinking in Bets by Annie Duke.
Right.
And I really liked it. It's so she's a former poker player and now business coach, as these things go. But it was really insightful. I'm not a gambler. I've never played. I've
Well,
never been
you're a
to
small
Vegas.
business owner. Of course,
But
you're a gambler.
right, and that's what I realized, right? That's exactly the thing. I was like, I have nothing to do with gambling. I don't know anything about it, but in the end, that's exactly it's sort of a very similar mechanism, right?
That's
And
right.
that's why I found this book interesting.
When people ask me, we have the Melbourne Cup here in Australia. I don't know if you've heard of it, every year. And people ask me if I'm going to put a bet on a gamble. I say I don't gamble because I gamble every day with the businesses that I have.
Right, right. And that's actually really true. And it's an interesting way to look at it. Well, obviously, especially from a portfolio perspective, that is more clear when you're there. Um, but also, and especially when you're starting out, right?
Yeah,
Quitting your day job, big gamble.
that's it. The number one habit you think a small business owner needs to develop and maintain?
That'd be pretty similar. I think this bias for action, doing things, like actually doing things, even as a manager later on. Just sometimes you just drop your pen, you do something, you do stuff, you go spring into action and help somebody out, work on your team, or just launch that site, talk to that customer. I think that's really important.
Jump over to growasmallbusiness.com and leave your details to get a short 2-minute email I send on Fridays to help small business owners like you become better leaders. I include some reading or professional development resources I've discovered in the last week.
Can you talk to how you've added people to the team, some wins, mistakes, and advice for those listening?
Of course. So I think some of the mistakes that I've definitely made is thinking that people will onboard themselves. Again, I in the past I've done too little hand holding, so to speak, and not in the way that I need to teach people something, but just giving them more business background, understanding what we do, sharing more info. I was very reluctant to sharing our revenue numbers, our closing rate with everybody, our lead flow, and I think 1.5 years ago, maybe I made the decision to just make that available to everybody on a monthly basis, and I did definitely not regret that. It helps a lot. It helps a lot in giving people clarity about why they do things, and it helps them make better decisions on their own. What is my priority? What is my focus? So that is something that I've learned about people management. The same is trying to understand how much slack to give people versus because you need to give them enough time for things, but at the same time, not too much, not let people do whatever they want without a plan. So this is also a very fine line. And I think I'm still working on that in a way to understand, how much do we do the daily stand-ups or do we not do them, or how granular are we with planning things out? Because you can do too little, you can do too much, and figuring out OKRs and all that is very exciting, and I think that's where I am at right now.
What are some of the things you recommend to building a sustainable and kick-ass culture to help with the growth? And particularly must be extra challenging because you've been remote from day one.
Yeah, definitely. I think my number one factor is the trust. I think people appreciate if you put the trust in them. So definitely don't use any monitoring tools that will record screens. I know that some people will accept that, but mostly because they're desperate for a job, and that's not necessarily who you want to be working with. So any people that are more in demand will definitely not agree to that. I mean, you do see by the results if people deliver what they do. And now, whether they're sitting an hour less per day or more, or I don't think that matters as much. I think what people also remotely really want to do, and that's sort of in line with the Maslow pyramid, is to feel safe, right?
Yeah.
To improve their skills, to learn,
Mm-hmm.
and to work on interesting things, and pretty much in that order. So as long as you have a way of giving that to them, um, by managing your business in a way that you don't have to do hire and fire and spend everything, then first month where the revenue drops a little bit, you have to fire someone, which creates that uncertainty within the company. I think when people feel unsafe, they really can't perform, versus improving people's skills. And I think that's something that we try to do. I think we can be better at that, but we try to, if somebody comes to me and says, I would like to do this course, or can I get that book, or anything like that, something I really want to promote more. And then I'm glad that people now find our company interesting again. When it was just one person doing the odd copy paste email thing, I think
Mm-hmm.
that was pretty boring, which is why I had quite a lot of churn back then. But
Yeah.
I think now, with also more insight into the business, people really find it interesting.
You've just described the 4 reasons why people choose to work somewhere. In most HR surveys, pay comes as the 5th reason, but there's 4 other non-monetary reasons: alignment to vision, being developed, engagement, and feeling secure in the workplace and doing challenging work. So all those things are usually voted above what they're paid. You obviously need to pay them market rates, but especially in this day and age of the Great Resignation and etc., workers have a lot more choices now to where they work.
Totally. And even remotely, um, especially with developers, the days are over when you could show up in I don't know, Eastern Europe, which is where we started out, and everybody will come, right? That's just not happening.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, people are getting very good remote jobs. They're used to that. It's a very competitive landscape, and not just with developers, also with marketers, also with um, other sorts of roles, especially since COVID, right? So, mm, mm, yeah, really gotta provide a compelling offer to good people, no matter where they are these days.
Tell the audience how you've handled balance.
Well, I try. um, to be honest, I do work a lot, and sometimes too much. I try to take days off, and I have blocked hours in the day. I do work almost part-time twice a day because of the costs that we have internationally. So I can't do a 9 to 5. Usually it's like 9 or 10-ish until 4, or 3 p.m. even. Then it's time for the family, putting the kid to sleep, and then 9 p.m. is mostly when I have another round of calls with the West Coast people. But yeah, I think what I definitely need to focus on more is just deliberately taking time off. It's so easy to do everything, to be the person that's responsible for everything. And people also get used to that. And before solving their own problem, they come to you. And I'm this kind of guy that's always gonna help, and always knows and will not push back and say you solve that on your own first. And that's what you get when you do that.
Yeah, well, I used to run a family business here in Tasmania, a distilling business, when the family sold out to investors, and the management team were used to just going to the owners because family business, very close to them, and ask all these decisions. And last about a month is saying I came up with when a manager would come to me with something. Clearly, I didn't. It was their decision, not mine. And I would say, I make enough decisions on a day to run a small South Pacific nation. That's your decision to make. I can give you my opinion, but I'm not making the decision, because you've just got to, it was a cultural change because it's been family run for 20 years. So, yeah.
Yeah, and that's something I need to learn and apply more as well. Indeed.
But yeah, teach them to fish, don't hand them a fish. Yeah. How much
Exactly.
how much professional development have you invested in yourself?
Apart from the advisors that we use, but that's more business advisors. Well, that also falls into personal development because I guess I've learned a lot through it, but I've not had any life coaches or anything like that apart from the degree I got at university. I don't I think that's something I should be doing as well. I see the value. I've just not really started, apart from books and things
Yep.
that we all do,
Mm.
but not had any professional life coach or business coach or anything like that.
Yep.
Have you had any experience with that?
As in business coaches?
Yeah.
I've more leaned on mentors over the last 23 years I've been in business. So
Hmm.
we've had advisors on our boards for our social enterprise in London, for example. We've got two really good advisors, independents there, and other mentors and advisors on boards, etc. And so I tend to use more mentors per se than specific coaches, and it's probably a mistake of mine. I should have, in specific areas, gotten coaches in, for example, sales or presenting, live, etc., things like that over time. But yeah, if I could go back in time, that's something I would do. But I think I got it right on the mentor side of things, informal mentors, and I got a lot out of that.
That's great. So yeah, adding a few more advisors is definitely on my bucket list. Marketing worked out really great.
Yep.
We sell that service ourselves, right, to the clients who come to us. And in the product development space, we work with world-class people, who've run huge product teams in corporations, been head of product at startups, like these really senior people, and we sell them on an hourly basis to our clients who want to get that advice, and we see the results that gives you, right? 2 hours or a couple of sessions, and the concept is just so clear that you can then really have someone remote implement it, and it turns out really well. So ironically, it's something that I've neglected a bit in my own business, and so it's definitely on my to-do list.
So you may have already answered the next question. Do you have a board of directors or advisors?
Apart from the one
So,
marketing
yeah.
person, no, not at this point.
Yep. Now, you're one of the few, Victor, that we've had on that's exited a business. Have you got any advice for our audience on if they're thinking about getting out one day?
I don't think I can give too much advice on that because it was a very small exit. It was a very small business. It was a very young business. I did exit more because I felt the need to run my own business in that would position itself slightly differently. So while I did make some money from it, I don't think it gives me experience to talk about exits much. Unfortunately, maybe that's still ahead of me.
All right, Victor, on to our final 5 questions. What do you think is the hardest thing in growing a small business?
The hardest thing is definitely going to be keeping it together, handling everything, especially if you're not funded.
Favorite business book which has helped you the most?
That would definitely be The Ultimate Sales Machine by Chet Holmes. Old book, but
It's a good
really
one.
good.
Okay, I'm going to add that one to my list now. Any great podcasts or online learning tools you use for your own professional development?
Other podcasts that I listen to on a regular basis are, Tropical MBA, Startups for the Rest of Us for folks who want to launch a SaaS or business like that. Really good show. And I've recently discovered My First Million, which is also a really cool show about a lot of different business models. Very interesting to hear.
Have you listened to the Nathan Latka podcast?
A few episodes, yes.
Yeah, he's
But
great.
not too actively. Unfortunately, need to add that.
Yeah, he just focused on SaaS businesses. I think it's less than 20 minutes, and it's one every day, each week. Mm.
Definitely out there, yeah.
Yeah, he's great. He pulls all the numbers out. So particularly if you're a SaaS or tech company, it's good. One tool you'd recommend to help grow a small business?
I think Notion changed the way we work. I really like that. It's probably very popular, not much of a secret tip. But together with Zapier and Typeform and whatnot, the entire tool stack that you have these days available is really good.
Do you use Notion to run your team, or you use other project workflow software?
No, actually, we use that with the Kanban board. So we used to use Trello, and then we just moved everything over to Notion.
Yeah.
We even, because that's how I try to set up these things, is that even the recruiting business on Superb Hire, where we hire the remote operations and marketing positions, even that is prototyped in Notion completely from start to finish. We screen applicants through Notion. We do everything through Notion. And obviously that has its limitations in terms of scale, but getting started with these processes and just being somewhat organized is the key. And then you start finding more complex but more scalable solutions that are a better fit. Same with our matching business. I started out just with a CRM that we had. Pipedrive was what we had in the beginning, but due to the nature of our business, which is a two-sided marketplace almost of sorts, right? Whereas most CRMs only focus on you and clients and not any third parties, we had to start developing our own internal CRM at one point, which now automates a lot. It does a lot on the back end. And it's what enabled us to scale. But it's just important not to do that too early, not to say, oh, I need to build a big system and then I'm going to build a great business. It's the other way around.
Yep, totally agree. Finally, my favorite question. What would you tell yourself on day one of starting out?
Probably to keep going. And to focus more on building an audience, because that's really what matters in a way. I guess who has the access to clients in the end is the one who's upstream and who can then distribute that. Sort of what we do. But I had to learn that. First, I thought I would be a sales on demand person for software houses. If in Berlin, that's what I thought. If somebody had a lead in Berlin and they couldn't meet them themselves, I would do that for them. And then nobody wanted that service. But everybody wanted just leads from us. And I'm not a marketer. I can't give you leads. I don't know how to do that. But then again, I think that is really almost the most important part of a business.
Yep. Great. Thank you very much for your time today, Victor. I've really enjoyed the chat, and congratulations. Amazing growth over 6 years, starting out on your own, 8 full-time core team members and over 100 developers. That is phenomenal. Well done.
Well, thank you so much. It was great being here. It was great chatting to you. Hope it's useful.
And for our audience, we would greatly appreciate a review in iTunes or whatever platform you listen to us on. More reviews means we bubble up higher in iTunes, etc. So more business owners looking for podcasts to help with their growth will find us.